Hello, my name is Robert Joyner. In this tutorial, I will show you how to make simple compositions extraordinary. The objectives is to use simple compositions so that you can show off expressive and bold brushwork, how to add movement and energy to a big block of color, how to create a sense of light and shadow, using recognizable objects so that viewers immediately identify with your painting. Less is more. Using contrasts for backgrounds to pop your subject, and how to anchor your objects. All right, the materials I will use will be the Strathmore 500 series premium artboard, a fantastic durable surface, wonderful for mixed media. Acrylic paint, you can see the palette details below. You don't necessarily have to use that palette. You don't necessarily have to paint a ketchup bottle. Paint whatever it is you like and whatever colors make you happy. I'm using acrylic ink. I am also using compressed charcoal and a variety or just a few brushes in this demonstration. Now we'll start with a blank white piece of Strathmore 500 series artboard. I'm right away going to use a kind of a contrast color to the red bottle. So I know I want to paint a red Heinz ketchup bottle. So I want some blue in the background that will pop that subject. Also, I will introduce like a little bit of yellows and some other colors that are warm in the background as well too, so that it doesn't, the background doesn't look too stiff. So I've got some nice blue there. Now I'm mixing in some yellow, and that yellow where I added it on the background, I know that's going to be my light source. So my light will come in from the right. So I want that nice warm pop of yellow on the right. I use simple compositions to showcase my brushwork. So if things get too complicated or too complex, the composition, then if you're very loose and expressive, it may get too cluttered. So keep things simple if you like to paint loosely, and I think you'll find your subjects have room to breathe, and the painting becomes more relaxed versus stiff. Now that background is completely dry, and I'm coming in with some red paint now. And I'm just adding some bits and pieces of the shape of the bottle. But again, I'm allowing some of that background color to show through. So I don't want to completely block that out. I like for areas of that background to come through in the bottle. So, when you're painting, just kind of keep that in mind. That gives it a nice expressive look. And then your background has even more purpose as well. Choose objects that viewers can recognize. So a Heinz ketchup bottle, I think everyone's probably used it in the past, so they immediately, when they see this painting, they can relate to it. And you're automatically engaging them and you're connecting them to an experience or something they've had in their life. So just a little tip when you do your compositions, to think about that. Now I'm just using some white to add some, just the label, and I'm very loose. I don't like to get things perfect. I probably couldn't do it perfect if I wanted to. So again, I keep it loose. So now I'm using some purple there. Now you see I'm using that purple in the shadow, but I'm also blending that into the bottle. So I'm very careful to add that shadow color into my object so I don't end up with a stiff shadow. So again, when you're using those shadow colors, incorporate that into your object as well so you don't have a stiff shadow. And I think the result is a much softer shadow versus and a much softer painting versus something that's too stiff as well. So just keep that in mind. And now I'm using a knife or the tip of my brush to scribe into the wet white paint. You can see that adds some nice lines. You can also use a palette knife to do this as well. Very useful if you want to add lines or to redefine a shape that's been lost. So I'll always keep that tool in your back pocket when you're painting, and you can always scratch into that wet paint. It's a lot of fun to do it. So now I'm just using a little bit lighter red for the light side of the bottle. So the light source is coming in from my right. Again, allowing a little bit of that yellow to show through of the underpainting is good. Um, Now, I also want to point out that I used the tip of my brush and scratched into the purple paint too to kind of break up that big block of color. And now I'm using a piece of charcoal to kind of throw some outlines of the bottle. So I'm not outlining the whole thing. I'm just doing bits and pieces of the bottle where I feel like the shape has been lost, or maybe, it's just a little bit off. So that little hint of charcoal will help define it. Now I'm going to go back and show you what I just did there. I'm using opaque paint like blue to redefine the shadow. The shadow got a little bit high, and it's a little bit too big for the object. So you can always come back with opaque paint and redefine your object. So I'm going to rewind here. I'm showing you I'm using that blue to kind of chisel into that purple so that shadow looks a little more realistic. And not so high. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's okay when you're painting a shadow to not get it perfect, because you can always come back and redefine it later with a thick acrylic paint or some opaque paint. Now, it's whenever I'm doing details, again, I hit and miss. That's just my style, and it's the way I like to paint. I don't like fussy details. But again, I mean, you can use these techniques. You can use them within your style and your preference. So I've painted a few ketchup bottles, and I know, it has Heinz on the top. It has tomato ketchup. So I'm just getting bits and pieces of the letters and of the label in there, and I'm leaving plenty of room for imagination. So I'm careful, not to paint every little detail and every letter. And it's okay, to do that. I mean, that's, there's no rules in art, so you're not going to get in trouble for keeping it loose and expressive. Now I'm using the acrylic ink, red acrylic ink, and I'm just adding pops of color. So just kind of hit and miss. It's a very rich tone, that red I'm using, and those red colors really add a lot to the overall finish of the painting too. So now I'm just using a touch of purple with the red, just adding building up that shadow side of the bottle, maybe even exaggerating it a little bit, more so than probably what it would be in real life. And that's okay too. I like to do that. You can see there's not a perfect line on the left side of the bottle. The blue's cutting into the bottle, the red is drifting out into the background, and that's fine. I like I like lines that are there, but that are loose, so that it's not perfect. So if you like that loose, expressive style, then make sure your lines aren't too stiff, and make sure they're broken up a little bit. So now that that label is dry, that black, I can kind of go in with white, just add little bits and pieces of white in there to kind of define a C or define a letter. And that's kind of nice too. So again, when I'm putting that black down, that's why I don't paint perfect little letters, because I know I can come back with white or whatever color I may need to add little bits of detail of a letter. So and again, you notice I'm using my liner brush. I love that liner brush. Really get some nice strokes with it. Um, just adding just little bits and pieces of details just to break up some of these areas. Adding a little touch of blue there, a little just to change the shade of blue. And this painting is coming together pretty quickly. And this is how I like to work. I don't like to. If I spend too much time on a painting, I tend to get bored. So I like to paint quickly and loosely. Um, I think we pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover in this painting. So we got a nice, loose, simple, but effective and extraordinary painting. And I don't mean extraordinary in a it's the best thing ever. I just mean it's not ordinary. It's because the composition is simple, you know, the brush strokes, everything I did there from the background to the finish is visible. So I haven't cluttered the finish of the painting. So we're just going to get some close-ups of the brush work. You can see all the, you know, the inks and the different line work and how I scribed, and we got some drips there, you know, just from the painting. You can see how I broke up that purple by scribing into it with my brush. Um, so, you know, you got a nice large block of color, but again, it's broken up with the where I scribed into it, and that's nice. I mean, you know, I don't like for things to be, you know, big and bold and to be boring. So, good way to do it without going overboard. All right, and here's the painting as it dried, so you get a nice shot of it. That's with natural light. Again, it's simple, colorful. And unique and a nice expressive you know, style, you know, to go along with it. So I think that pretty much covers this tutorial. Again, I'm using the Strathmore 500 series premium artboard. Very durable surface. If you like working with mixed media and different materials and you like to press into your board, it's a great surface to work with. I highly recommend it. I appreciate you watching the video and the tutorial. I look forward to seeing what you do after you watch it, and I'll talk to you in the forums. Thanks a lot.